sustainable development. With the 7 years remaining before 2030, it is imperative that we accelerate actions to achieve the SDGs. The COVID-19 pandemic has negatively impacted the attainment of SDG targets. For example, as highlighted in the 2022 ASEAN SDG snapshot report, there was an increase in the number of people vulnerable to climate-related disasters. The pandemic also caused the economic turnout, with GDP per employed person in the region contracting by 0.8% and higher the unemployment rate of 5.4% in 2020. This hampered the attainment of SDG 1 on the ending the poverty and SDG 8 on decent work and economic growth. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, amidst the regional and global challenges, ASEAN remains steadfast in its commitment to achieve the SDGs. Let me highlight that during the second ASEAN Ministerial Dialogue on accelerating the action to achieve the SDGs held in March 2023, the ministers and heads of the National Development Planning Agencies in the ASEAN member states underscored the importance of empowering the local communities. In particular, rural communities need to be engaged to promote the SDGs at the local level and facilitate the networking and dialogues among the ASEAN local communities and the relevant multiple stakeholders. I would also like to highlight that the ASEAN leaders adopted a joint statement on establishment of the ASEAN Villages Network during the 41st ASEAN Summit held in May 2023. The network aims to provide a platform for the whole of community and the inclusive participation to facilitate the collaboration and cooperation among the villages, exchange of the strategies and approaches, and to facilitate the access of rural products to markets. Lastly, ASEAN frameworks such as the ASEAN Master Plan on Rural Development and the ASEAN Framework Action Plan on Rural Development and Poverty Eradication 2021 to 2025 reinforce the ASEAN's commitment to engaging and benefiting the peoples in the region towards inclusive
yang mendukung keberlanjutan. Hadirin yang saya banggakan, setelah selama kurang lebih 3 tahun lamanya, pandemi COVID-19 menyebar di berbagai belahan dunia. Pandemi COVID-19 telah menyebabkan banyak keterbatasan dalam segala aspek kehidupan, termasuk ekonomi yang dapat mengancam kesejahteraan. Desa juga merasakan dampak akan perubahan yang terjadi akibat pandemi. Desa memerlukan usaha strategis untuk pemulihan ekonomi di desa.
Good morning, everybody. I'd just like to begin by acknowledging His Excellency Minister Abdul Hali Eskandar, Mrs. Din T. Tran Hyun, the Honourable Dr. Eti Kumulawati, His Excellency Director General Sujitu, other distinguished partners and delegates. It's a privilege to attend this event to mark the first ASEAN Village Network gathering and related meetings, and our particular thanks to Indonesia's Ministry of Villages, Development of Disadvantaged Regions and Transmigration for your leadership and opportunity to support ASEAN on this important initiative. An initiative that will bring a local lens to our rural development issues facing villages across the ASEAN region. In the endeavour to eradicate poverty and realise the ASEAN Community Vision 2025 and the Sustainable Development Goals, I'd also like to particularly thank the organisers of last night's welcome dinner at the beautiful tourism village we went to. It was amazing views and a wonderful cultural experience, so thank you to everyone who put that together. I'm sure everyone had a great time. More than half of ASEAN's population live in rural areas, and poverty is twice as prevalent in rural towns and villages than in urban centres. These gaps and inequalities widened as a result of the pandemic, during which in the Asia-Pacific region, an estimated 89 million people were pushed into extreme poverty. But even before the pandemic, rural areas in general endured inadequate infrastructure and low access to public services and markets. Coupled with a limited labour market that's largely informal and seasonal and prone to environmental shocks, communities in rural areas are vulnerable to food and livelihood insecurity, of which women carry the heaviest burden and are most at risk. The ASEAN Master Plan on Rural Development recognises the dynamic links between rural development, agricultural development, gender, disability, social inclusion and climate change. Reducing poverty and inequality necessitates a comprehensive and integrated whole of ASEAN approach. Transformative and sustainable rural development promotes economic growth, social stability, and environmental viability in our region. We warmly welcome ASEAN's efforts to establish the ASEAN Village Network that takes an integrated approach to ASEAN villages to work through shared challenges with local solutions. The network will continue to contribute to ASEAN community building and the implementation of the ASEAN Master Plan on Rural Development. Moreover, we're pleased to see the involvement of the private sector, which can be a strong driver in advancing rural economies to develop in tourism, products for market, and digital infrastructure. Australia shares ASEAN's vision for poverty eradication and rural development, and as a close neighbour and partner of ASEAN, promoting economic stability through rural development is a priority for our development cooperation, as set out in our Plan of Action to implement the ASEAN-Australia Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. Australia has helped the initiative for ASEAN integration become a more structured, actionable and measurable mechanism to engage Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar and Vietnam. Since 2011, Australia has supported development of Work Plans 3 and 4 and has completed 5 in-depth assessments, including on climate change mitigation, adoption of digital technology and smallholder farmers' productivity to guide the framing of future investments across the Mekong. We've also supported financial literacy for micro, small and medium enterprises and helped farmers adopt post-harvest loss reduction technologies. This year, Australia is funding the final assessment of outcomes metrics of the IAA Work Plan 3 and will support 3 further proposals under Work Plan 4, pending approval by the Joint Planning and Review Committee. These will focus on enhancing digital technology adoption in MSMEs, developing inclusive business programs and accelerating IAI implementation. Australia is committed to strengthening food security in ASEAN. Our $2.2 million ASEAN Innovate for Food regional program will deliver research and innovation for farmers, including on climate-resilient food and enhanced agro-biodiversity. Our $1.4 million support to the ASEAN Bioprotection